Hello everyone, welcome to my channel where we build ourselves. Today we will talk about why quiet women dominate. The psychology of silent confidence, mystery, and powerful presence. So let's begin. The woman who does not need to be loud. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that there is a woman who barely says anything? She does not enter the room demanding attention. She does not announce what she's doing. She does not tell everybody her plans. She does not feel the need to prove that she's beautiful, intelligent, successful, or important. And yet, people notice her, people watch her, people become curious about her, people remember her, and sometimes, without even trying, she becomes one of the most powerful people in the room. Now, compare that to someone who is constantly talking, constantly explaining, constantly posting, constantly telling everybody what they're about to do, constantly trying to prove that they are happy, successful, desirable, or unbothered. And somehow, the more they try to convince everyone that they're powerful, the less powerful they actually appear. That's the interesting thing about quiet women. Their power often does not come from what they say, it comes from what they do not say. And that's what we're talking about today. Why do quiet women often command so much attention? Why does silence sometimes create more respect than talking? Why does a woman who does not chase attention often requires more of it or receive more of it? And why does a woman who knows how to sit quietly, observe, and move strategically often becomes extremely difficult to manipulate? Now, before we go any further, I want to make something clear. Being quiet does not automatically make someone confident. You can be quiet because you're shy. You can be quiet because you're afraid. You can be quiet because you don't know what to say. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the woman who is quiet because she does not need to perform. The woman who has learned that not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every insult needs a response. Not every person deserves an explanation. Not every opportunity deserves a yes. And not every room deserves access to your energy. That's a completely different kind of quiet. That's intentional silence. And when a woman learns how to use that kind of silence, she becomes powerful. So get comfortable because we're about to have a conversation about quiet confidence, mystery, emotional intelligence, boundaries, femininity, self respect, and the psychology behind why silence can be so powerful. And by the end of this conversation, I want you to look at silence completely different. Part 1. Quiet does not mean weak. Let's start with one of the biggest misconceptions. People often confuse quietness with weakness, especially when it comes to women. A woman who speaks softly, she's insecure. A woman who does not argue, she can't stand up for herself. A woman who does not respond to every comment, she must not have anything to say. That's not true. Sometimes she simply has nothing to prove. Think about the strongest person you've ever met. Maybe it was a woman in your family. Maybe it was a boss. Maybe it was a teacher. Maybe it was someone who went through something incredibly difficult. Did their strength always come from shouting? Probably not. Sometimes the strongest people you've ever met are surprisingly calm. They don't need to raise their voice. They don't need to intimidate everybody. They don't need to dominate every conversation because internally they already know who they are. And that's the difference. A woman who does not know her worth often feels the need to announce it. A woman who knows her worth does not. She walks into a room differently. She does not think, do they like me? She thinks, do I like the energy in this room? That's a completely different mindset. One is seeking approval, the other is evaluating. And when you stop constantly seeking approval, you become much harder to control because people can no longer manipulate you with acceptance or rejection. They can't threaten you with, I won't talk to you anymore because you're okay. They can't make you panic with, people are talking about you because you know who you are. They can't control you with, everybody doesn't like you because you've accepted that not everybody is going to like you. And that is freedom. Now we go to part 2, the power of not explaining yourself. Let's talk about something many women struggle with, over explaining. You make a decision and immediately you feel like you need to explain it. I did not mean it like that. I was just saying, let me explain what happened. That's not what I meant. I promise I was not trying to. And before you know it, you've turned a simple situation into a 20-minute presentation defending your character. Stop it. Now listen, there are moments when communication is important. Absolutely. Healthy relationship requires communication. But there is a difference between communicating and begging to be understood by someone who has already decided to misunderstand you. That's where quiet women become powerful. They understand. I've explained myself once, I don't need to keep explaining. Imagine somebody accusing you of something you did not do. You explain, they continue. You explain again, they continue. At some point, you have to ask yourself, why am I working so hard to convince someone who has already chosen their opinion? Sometimes the answer is you don't. You simply step back. And that's not arrogance, that's emotional maturity. Because the older you become, the more you realize something. Not every misunderstanding requires your participation. Some people understand you perfectly, they simply don't like the answer. And those are two different things. Part 3. Quiet women observe more than they reveal. Here's another reason quiet women can be powerful. They're very good in observing. While everyone else is talking, they're listening. While everyone else is revealing their plans, they're watching. While everyone else is trying to impress, they're gathering information. And no, I'm not talking about being manipulative. I'm talking about being present. Think about how much information you miss when you're constantly waiting for your turn to speak. You do not listen. You're preparing your response. You're thinking about what you're going to say next. You're thinking about how you look. You're thinking about whether people are impressed. But when you're comfortable with silence, you actually observe people. You notice patterns. You notice how someone treats their waiter. You notice whether they keep their promises. You notice how they speak about people who aren't in the room. You notice whether their action match their words. You notice whether someone celebrates your success or becomes strategically quiet when something good happens to you. You notice everything, and here's the beautiful part. You don't necessarily announce that you've noticed. You simply remember. And that's wisdom. because people reveal themselves when you give them enough space to speak. You don't have to interrogate people. Let them talk. Let them show you who they are. Let them tell you what they value. Let them reveal how they think. And then believe what you see. Part 4. Mystery makes people curious. Now, let's talk about something people absolutely underestimate, which is mystery. A quiet woman often has an air of mystery around her, and mystery creates curiosity. Think about it. If someone tells you everything about themselves within the first 5 minutes of meeting them, what is left to discover? Nothing. You already know everything. But when someone is warm, friendly, confident, yet private, you become curious. What does she do? What's her life like? What's she thinking? Where does she go? What does she believe? And here's where social media has changed everything. We live in a world where people document everything, where they went, who they went with, what they ate, who they are dating, who they are traveling, where they are traveling, what they are buying, what they are feeling, who they are angry with, who disappointed them. Sometimes people are living their lives, and sometimes they are performing their lives for an audience. The quiet woman understands that privacy is valuable. She does not need to upload every achievement. She does not need to post every relationship. She does not need to show everybody her next move. She understands that some things become more beautiful when they are kept private. Your goals don't need an audience. Your healing does not need audience. Your relationship does not need audience. Your next move does not need audience. And honestly, sometimes the best thing you can do is disappear for a little while, work on yourself, and come back different. Part 5. She does not react to everything. Now, this is where quiet women really separate themselves. Emotional control. Imagine somebody says something rude to you. Your first instinct might be, "Oh, really?" And now you're ready. The argument begins. One comment becomes 5, 5 becomes 20, and suddenly you're spending your entire afternoon angry over something somebody said in 30 seconds. The quiet woman pauses, she breathes, and she asks herself, is this worth my energy? And that's a powerful question. Is this worth my energy? Not can I win? Not can I destroy her? Not can I embarrass him? Just, is this worth my energy? Sometimes the answer is yes. There are situations where you absolutely should speak up, definitely. There are moments where boundaries must be communicated. There are some times when silence would be unhealthy, but there are also situations where responding only makes the problem bigger. And emotional intelligence is knowing the difference. You don't have to respond to every provocation, because here's something people eventually learn. If someone knows exactly which buttons to push, they control you. But when you become emotionally disciplined, the buttons stop working. Someone tries to make you jealous, you don't react. Someone tries to embarrass you, you remain composed. Someone tries to provoke you, you don't give them the performance they're looking for. And suddenly, they have nothing. Part 6. She knows when to walk away. There is a special kind of confidence that comes from knowing when to leave. Not every friendship deserves another chance. Not every relationship needs another conversation. Not every argument needs closure. And not every person deserves unlimited access to you. Quiet women understand something very important. Access to you is a privilege. Now, that does not mean you should walk around believing you're better than everyone. Not at all. It means you understand that your time, energy, attention, and emotional availability have value. If someone constantly disrespects you, you don't have to keep giving them opportunities to do it. If a friendship is constantly draining you, you can step back. If a relationship repeatedly violates your boundaries, you can leave. And sometimes you don't even need a dramatic goodbye, you simply stop participating. That's what people often don't understand about mature women. They exist always around loud. They aren't always loud. Sometimes they simply become unavailable. Stop explaining. Stop chasing. Stop arguing. They stop trying to fix something that keeps breaking them. And one day, the person realizes she's really gone. Yes, because sometimes people don't appreciate your presence until they experience your absence. But here's the important part. Don't walk away to make someone chase you. Walk away because you've chosen yourself. That's the difference between manipulation and self-respect. She does not compete with other women. Part 7. Let's talk about competition. Because social media has convinced women that we're constantly supposed to compete. Who's prettier, who's richer, who's thinner, who's more successful, who has the better relationship, who has the better clothes, who gets more attention. But a truly confident woman eventually realizes there's no prize for being the best woman in a room. You don't need to be prettier than another woman. You don't need to be richer. You don't need to be more popular. You don't need to have a better relationship because another woman's success does not cancel yours. Her beauty does not remove yours. Her confidence does not take yours away. Her opportunity does not mean yours disappeared. A secure woman can walk into a room and see another beautiful woman and simply say she's beautiful. That's it. No jealousy, no comparison, no internal competition. She can see another woman succeed and say, good for her, because she understands something powerful. There is enough room for everyone to win. And if you spend your life competing with another woman, you'll never have enough energy to build your own life. So instead of asking, how do I become better than her? Ask, how do I become better than the woman I was yesterday? That's the competition that actually matters. Now we move to part 8. She lets her results speak. One of the most powerful things about a quiet woman is that she does not always announce what she's building. She builds. She doesn't say, I'm going to change my life. She changes it. She doesn't say, I'm going to start working out. She goes to the gym. She doesn't say, I'm going to save money. She just saves it. She doesn't tell everybody, I'm going to start a business. She researches, she plans, she starts. She fails, she learns, she starts again. And eventually, people notice. That's the beauty of quiet progress. You don't have to convince people that you're growing. They can see it. And sometimes the most satisfying feeling is that someone who hasn't seen you in 6 months say, wow, you've changed. And you simply smile because you know. You remember who you are. You remember the nights nobody saw. You remember the discipline. You remember the tears, the decision, choosing yourself when nobody was clapping. That's real confidence. Now the confidence of look at me, but the confidence of I know what I've survived. Part 9. She does not need to be the loudest woman in the room. Here's something I want you to remember. You do not have to be loud to be powerful. You don't have to dominate conversations. You don't have to have the strongest personality. You don't have to make everyone notice you. Sometimes presence speaks before words do. Walk slowly, speak clearly, listen carefully, make eye contact, stand confidently. Don't constantly look at your phone because you're uncomfortable with silence. Don't laugh at things you don't find funny just because you want to fit in. Don't agree with everything because you're afraid to be disliked. And don't change your personality depending on who walks in the room. Be consistent, be grounded, be yourself, because there's something incredibly attractive about a woman who is comfortable in her own presence. She can sit alone, eat alone, travel alone, go shopping alone, spend a weekend alone, and she doesn't feel like something is missing. She knows that being alone isn't the same as being lonely. Sometimes solitude is where you hear yourself again. Part 10. The real secret. She knows her value. And now we get to the real secret. The reason quiet women can be so powerful isn't actually because they're quiet, it's because they know their value. Silence is simply one of the ways that confidence expresses itself. When you know your value, you don't chase people who continuously reject you. When you know your value, you don't beg someone to choose you. When you know your value, you don't stay where you are constantly disrespected. You don't need to convince everyone you're worthy. You simply live accordingly. Your standards become different. Your relationships become different. Your relationship becomes different. The way you spend your time becomes different. And suddenly, your entire life begins to reflect your self respect. That's the real glow up. Not just changing your clothes, not just changing your hair, not just looking better, changing the way you allow people to treat you. Here's a final message for you. Become the woman who does not need to prove herself. So, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this conversation, it's this. You don't have to become louder. You don't have to become colder. You don't have to become mean. You don't have to stop caring. You don't have to turn yourself into somebody you're not. You simply need to become more secure in who you are. Learn to pause, learn to observe, learn to listen, learn when to speak, learn when to walk away. Learn when something deserves your attention and when it doesn't. Because your attention is powerful, your energy is powerful, your presence is powerful. And you do not need to give those things away to everyone. There will always be people who misunderstand you. There will always be people who don't like you. There will always be people who underestimate you. Let them. You don't need to spend your life correcting every opinion. Keep growing. Keep learning. Keep becoming. Keep your heart soft, but your boundaries strong. And remember, a quiet woman is invisible. Sometimes she's simply observing. Sometimes she's healing. She's building. She's planning. She's protecting her peace. And sometimes she's becoming the woman everybody will eventually notice. So don't be afraid of your quiet season. Don't feel pressured to announce every move. Don't feel guilty for becoming more private. Don't feel bad for outgrowing people. And don't confuse silence with weakness, because there is a difference between being silent because you're afraid and being silent because you know exactly who you are. The first comes from insecurity. The second comes from power. So become that woman, the woman who does not chase, who does not beg, who does not compete, who does not react to everything, who does not need to announce her worth, the woman who walks into a room and does not ask for permission to belong there. She simply belongs. That's the woman we're becoming. That's the energy we're choosing. And that's why quiet women don't need to dominate the room. They simply have a presence that makes the room notice them. If this conversation spoke to you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell because we're building a community of women who are learning to become more confident, emotionally intelligent, self-respecting, and powerful. And before you leave, I want you to answer one question in the comments. Are you naturally a quiet woman, or did life teach you to become quiet? I genuinely love to hear your story. And remember, you don't have to be the loudest woman in the room. You just have to be the woman who knows her worth. Stay graceful, stay grounded, protect your peace, and keep becoming the woman you're proud to be. I'll see you in the next conversation of part 2. Until then, keep your crown on, queens. Bye.